My topic is the Colorado Springs geologic column, that geologic structure that was built in Monument Valley Park. The geology and what it represents, is pretty well known, but the history behind it has kind of been forgotten. It's been over 100 years now since it was built by Edmund Van Diest, who was General Palmer's sort of project manager for Monument Valley Park. Palmer and Edmund Van Diest called it the geologic section, which is really what it was. And what the geologic section was a representation of the local geological strata that underlie the Pikes Peak region, from the Pikes Peak granite, from the Paleolithic, all the way up to some of the shales and limestones of the late Cretaceous. In other words, the geological rock layers that underlie all of the Pikes Peak region. When you walk by it now, all you really see is a rock wall. But when it was built, it was a much more dynamic representation, not only of the strata that underlie our local, the Pikes Peak region, but of the process of erosion and everything, because Van Diest put it in with a waterfall that was there. He oriented the waterfall so it sort of poured right next to the layers of rock. And so it looked very much, if you were standing there, almost, and this is what was intended, almost as if, those rock layers had actually been there and were eroded by this waterfall. That was very much the intent. And they're even uplifted to the west, so it looks as if it was, this geologic section was part of the whole, foothills, Front Range uplift. It was a reminder that geology really was queen of the sciences. It's always said in the ancient world astronomy was queen of the sciences, but for Colorado Springs and the Pikes Peak region 105 years ago, 100 century ago, it was all about geology, what we could extract from our local environment, blasting through rock to get trains up to Cripple Creek to bring the gold ore back, knowing how to mine effectively so we could extract the mineral wealth. And that's really, I think, what Van Diest wanted to remind us of, was that it was geology that on which we based our wealth 100 years ago. As an historian of science, I think it's fascinating to me how much history of scientific endeavor and experiment took place here that I think people just don't realize. So the geologic section is just but one small example of all the interesting things that were going on here. When you're walking around your town or your local region, and you realize that there are objects or buildings or like the geologic section, all of these items connect us to our past. And since we live here, wherever one lives, there tends to be something interesting that can connect them to the past. And so the Pikes Peak Regional History Symposium, and these topics in particular on enterprise and industry, especially now, I think it can serve to remind us of the wealth that we do have here, the cultural wealth, the mineral wealth, and just the beauty of the region. And I think these sorts of historical projects really help us remember what an exciting place this is.